Hello, and welcome back to episode number 44 of the Precision Personal Training Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Precision PT, our very selves. So if you would like to get in touch regarding anything to do with one-to-one coaching in the West of Ireland area, you can just DM us on Instagram or ping us an email at precisionpt00@gmail.com. Most people don't struggle with working hard, they struggle with switching off. And today's episode is going to hit home for a lot of you, especially if you feel like your brain is constantly on, you're overthinking everything, or you're lying in bed at night wrecked but still cannot switch off. I'm joined by Mr. Tom Price, who spent over 20 years in the corporate world before completely changing direction and now works in hypnotherapy, helping people manage stress, overthinking, and actually learn how to switch off. In this episode, we're going to break down why high performers struggle with this so much, what's actually going on in your mind when you can't switch off, and some practical things that you can take home for yourself. Tom, great to have you on. Do you want to just give people a bit of background to yourself before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much, Carl, for inviting me. So I am Tom, and I am a hypnotherapist and mindset coach. And as you mentioned there, Carl, I spent 20 years within corporate IT, and made a bit of a radical change into hypnotherapy last year. So went full time with my hypnotherapy practice in September, and it's been pretty much full on from there. So as you mentioned, I am specialising and working predominantly with people who are struggling with chronic stress and anxiety, which is leading to burnout. And I've worked with about 40 plus people in the last 8-9 months. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, quite about as fast paced as my corporate world, to be honest, at the minute. But I need to start practicing a little bit more what I preach. But we can talk about that in a bit.
Nice. So look, you said you spent years in corporate IT, like 20 years, was it?
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah. So
What did that actually look like on a day-to-day for you?
most recently I was working as a network architect. So I was very much working strategically with companies. So I worked for a managed service provider. So we would work with lots of different companies, and I worked with quite a few well-known high street brands. I don't really want to name any of them, but quite a few well-known brands out there. And I would just provide that guidance around their technology stack and how that can drive their business and solve their problems and any issues they currently got. So that was my most recent role, and I was doing that for about 5 or 6 years. But before that, I was always been interested in IT. I think I had my first PC when I was 10 or 11 years old with Windows 95. So that shows my age a little bit. And it just progressed from there really. So I suppose it's a bit of my identity really, just working in IT. And I moved from role to role, just progressed through the ranks from support roles into more senior and strategic roles until I decided that world and that life wasn't really for me anymore.
Was that just based off you actually reaching burnout yourself, or were you constantly battling that where you're like, I'm giving so much and not really giving back to my body, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so it was, yes, I would class it as burnout. So, everybody's got their own definition of what burnout is, but so especially my most recent role, I was part of the sales function, and we all know what sales working in that environment is like. It's very fast paced. Everybody's doing all they can to get deals over the line. Working full on, and that's what it's like for me. So I was supporting the sales team, providing the technical lead. So I'd be working on like a project or a tender for 3 months, 7 days a week. And that's where it's really affected me. I was stopping doing the things outside of work, like going to the gym, running. So for me, it's more of a cycle where I was experiencing burnout. And then after that project, it would sort of die down again, and I'd be able to manage it myself and start putting practice in myself to get back to how I wanted to feel. But it was just this cycle, and I knew that this wasn't for me. But there's people within that role, and especially the sales team, they love that environment because it was a goal they wanted to work towards, bringing in these deals, getting the commission. But for me, it just didn't align with what I wanted from my role.
And like, was there certain signs that you ignored? Obviously, you're picking up on one there, like you were missing out on your hobbies and
Yeah.
it was eating into that. But like, let's say actual physical signs or just was it just overall fatigue? Like, what were you ignoring anything during that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you mentioned, yeah, fatigue, that was one. Just the energy, not having the energy to, for example, go for a run. There'd be some times where I had the time to go for a run, but just the energy wasn't there. But there was things like spending time or going out with my mates, my mates I've known for like 20 years, 30 years, and I didn't want to do that. And even when I was out with them, I just didn't feel myself. And in strange ways, sometimes I'd feel nervous about going out and worrying what to say. And it was horrible. It was just not a nice place to be. But yeah, so those were the signs. But yeah, sleep as well. Sleep was affected. That was a big one. You go to bed and you can't switch off. You don't feel like you can switch off because you've just got to make sure you're on the ball for tomorrow. Yeah, so it was. There's quite a few signs, but I think for me, I wouldn't say I was aware of it, but I knew something had to change. It did. I would say it did gradually creep up on me, and I thought, you know what, something has to change. This isn't right. And I got a really supportive partner, and I mentioned to her that this wasn't right, and she always mentioned, you need to do something about it. Either how you handle that situation has to change, or you change the situation itself. So yeah, it was. There was lots of signs.
And then what actually made you move into hypnotherapy specifically?
So I'd always been into, I'd say, the spiritual side of things. Not, I mean, what I do isn't really spiritual; it's all science backed. So I'd always been interested in mindset, more with sport, to be honest. How your elite level athletes, they use the mindset, don't they, to get that extra, whatever it might be, 0.1%. So I'd always been interested in that. So yeah, I was probably about 5 years ago, I was looking at researching different careers, and I was looking at psychology, potentially going back to university, but that led into hypnotherapy. And I reached out to, I actually spoke to a chap who had a very similar career path to me. He worked in IT, then went into IT sales, become disillusioned with that, and he moved into hypnotherapy. So I had a really good conversation with him, and it could stem from there really. And then, yeah, 2 years ago, I really started taking it seriously and was doing a lot of self hypnosis. And yeah, then I last February, just over a year ago, I enrolled on a hypnotherapy diploma. Was working with clients from day one, getting really good results, and thought, you know what, this is this is a bit of me. This really aligns what I want to do. But I didn't expect to transition so fast. Another factor that did play a big part was that where I was working, they were going through another restructuring process. So lots of redundancies, lots of change within different departments. And yeah, that was just a push. I just thought, you know what, I don't think I'm ready to, I don't want to go through that pain again of, I mean, I was told my job was safe, but it was just the whole pain of, yeah, that restructuring. I've been through it before with redundancies, and yeah, so that was the push that ultimately, yeah, made the decision for me.
Okay, and then was there stress around that decision making?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of it was, I mean, finances. I had a bit of money, so I knew I had,
Safety
I did
net.
12 months. Yeah, so I knew I'd had finances behind me. So that was all right. But even still, that was still playing in the back of the mind that I've only got this amount of time. So I need to hit the ground running, really. But yeah, so there was that stress. But I think a lot of it was around what people, again, would think of me. That 20 years in IT, I studied IT at school, did a degree in computer science. So even for a lot of my mates, my identity was, oh, Tom's the IT guy, sort of thing. So I think it was more, yeah, the worry around that. What will people think? What will people judge me? But to cut a long story short, now everybody was like, "This is amazing, go for it." Yeah, again, it just goes to show, doesn't it? You imagine these worst case scenarios, and 9 times out of 10, it's not as worse as you always think.
It ends up actually working out.
Exactly
Yeah.
that, exactly that, yeah.
And then look, for anyone listening to this that wouldn't actually know what hypnotherapy is, can you like describe what it actually is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I think with hypnotherapy, I think a lot of people think that it is hypnosis, what you see on TV, where,
Yeah.
you sit down and it's swinging, watch, and, you go into a trance and all that. So, it's nothing like that. So,
There's a guy in Ireland that does that. I think it's Keith Barry or someone.
how is it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's well known for that. So anyone
That's
that I
it.
kind of mentioned about you coming on the podcast, they were like, "Oh, does he do what Keith Barry does?" I was like, "No,
No,
no."
no, this is it. Yeah, so hypnotherapy. So it's basically a combination of talking therapy. So where in a session we'll sit down, we'll talk about your week, what your goals are, how you move you towards that. So it's a lot of it is just talking therapy, but it's combined with hypnosis. And all what hypnosis is a relaxed state. So it's a natural state you go in and out of, or we all do many times a day. So the common one is, if you're driving a regular route that you do all the time, and you go into autopilot where the road is probably the last thing that's on your mind. You're thinking about other things, but if somebody comes in front of you, you can put the brakes on. And that's all that trance is. It's a really focused state of attention. But we use that state in hypnotherapy because that's when your subconscious mind is susceptible to suggestions. So if you've got some, unwanted habits or thought patterns, this negative thinking, in hypnosis, we can dissolve that. So it's really, really, really powerful state. But that's all it is. It's talking therapy with this hypnosis. So it's no magic or anything like that. But yeah, it can be really powerful for as we mentioned here, for stress, anxiety, but confidence, anything like self-doubt. We've talked about overthinking and breaking that negative thinking loop. But it's really powerful for everything, for fears and phobias, public speaking, anything pretty much. It's really powerful because again, a lot of it comes from the mindset, and it's our brain that paints the picture of the world we see. So if we can change that, we can change the world that we live in. So yeah, really powerful.
And what's some like let's say common traits you see in a lot of people that come to work with you, like when they get started to where they finish afterwards?
Yeah, so I would say probably 95 of my clients who come to see me, their problems stem from just unmanaged stress. So basically, and we say in a lot of therapies, we say we have a stress bucket where we can take up so much stress, family worries, financial, health worries, but also negative thinking as well. So when we are thinking negatively, that gets chucked in the stress bucket. So it's when that's overflowing, that's when we start having problems. That's when we are always on edge. That's when we can't sleep at night. So yeah, so a lot of the clients I see is just they've got suffering from chronic stress. So, and then chronic stress is what causes the anxiety. So we've talked about, overthinking, self-doubt, lack of confidence, and that comes from anxiety, where we're just negatively thinking about our future, our environment. But yeah, that's I'll probably say that's the most common trait. But with that, clients can't sleep. They can't switch off. They can't be present with a family. A lot of the stuff that I describe about myself, going out with friends and just not being able to enjoy that moment because their mind is thinking about what's to come at work or what's they've done in the past. Did they do that right? So it's. But I do work with people who come to me with more specific problems as well around public speaking as well. I'm currently working with somebody around public speaking. They do a lot of presentations at work and working with that. So quite a variety, but most of it is with stress and anxiety.
And let's say then with something like anxiety, is that something we're all born with and it just comes out later? Or is that something that we just develop over time through probably self-doubt, negative talk, just beating ourselves up? Is it inherited or is it kind of nurtured?
Yeah, no, that's good question. So There's so yeah, we do inherit it. In fact, so there's a part of the brain. So we say we've got two parts of the brain that are quite important. We've got the intellectual mind, which is essentially you at your best. You know, you're brave, you're motivated, you're focused, you're driven. Essentially, you know, that's you at your A grade type of thing. But there's another part of the brain, the primitive part of the brain, which we inherited from our ancestors. So, you know, 300,000 years ago, we've inherited that as it is really. It's not evolved. And that's the part of the brain that can only really react with anxiety, depression and anger. So, I mean, it's always healthy to have a little bit of anxiety and anger in certain situations. But what exacerbates that is our stress levels. When our stress levels go through the roof, that's when the primitive mind takes hold a lot more. So we're more inclined to be negative, anxious, and overthink, feel on edge, because our ancestors would have used that part of the brain, that primitive mind, to live and survive in their everyday lives, because they had to defend themselves against, you know, wild animals, saber-toothed tigers. We don't have to do that nowadays, so it doesn't serve us. You know, a meeting at work or whatever it might be, that shouldn't be seen as a saber-toothed tiger, but we see it as that because of our stress levels. And yeah,
Okay, so then that's something that it's kind of both thing. Like it's inherited and then obviously through everyday life as well. So then why do people feel like, let's say, exhausted but can't actually switch off? And I have a good few clients that are like this. They're lying there and they put in an absolute Trojan workday, but just cannot stop. They can't go to sleep.
yeah. So yes, that's a really good one. So with that one, so yeah, imagine clients had a really busy day. They've had loads of stress. So that imagine their stress bucket's completely full. So they'll go to sleep and they'll just be constantly thinking. So why is that? And it's because their stress has just completely overflowed, is completely out of control. And that's when the primitive mind takes control. And the primitive mind, it reacts either with anxiety, anger, and depression. But when you're trying to go to sleep, that anxiety, and all anxiety is negative thinking. But overthinking and feeling on edge is just a symptom of anxiety in that primitive mind. So that primitive mind is just trying to keep us safe, ensure our survival. So if we've got loads of stress in our lives, that part of the brain says, he's got loads of stress here, he's in danger. Let's keep him awake, let's keep him on alert. The last thing we want to do is send him to sleep because he could die. And it's as very simple as that.
Well,
So it's just, again, that primitive mind. And there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is like our security guard. It just keeps us on edge if there's any danger. You know, if there was a loud bang now in your room now, you would get up and have a look, and that'll be your amygdala checking for danger. And then your intellectual mind would come back on board and say, do you know what? Someone's just fallen over, relax. But yeah, it's this primitive mind, essentially. When we're overloaded with stress, the primitive mind takes control,
so
which
then,
just, yeah, keeps us on alert.
yeah, how the hell can we not be in the primitive mind before going to bed? Is there anything that, let's say, practical tips that people can do throughout the day, or is this something that needs to be tackled over time? It's not a quick fix.
It's something that has to be tackled over time. I mean, there's quick fixes to try and implement. I mean, you know, you'll know from the gym, a lot of work, and especially again with the mind, it requires repetition. You know,
Yeah,
you don't go to the gym and, you know, do a few bicep curls and get, you know, nice chunky biceps. You have to put in the work in. But
I wish. I wish.
yeah, this is it. Yeah, but with that, there is some techniques. I mean, essentially, we have to do all that we can to prioritize a good night's sleep. So even with my clients, I will say maintain a regular bedtime routine. So just go to bed at the same time each evening. So whether that's at 10 o'clock, just keep doing it. The brain loves repetition. So if the brain knows that 10 o'clock is time to go to bed, then it will try and induce that state. So that's really important. It's worth it to mention as well, the reason why sleep is really important as well is there's a part of our sleep cycle called REM, so it's rapid eye movement. And essentially that's what just helps to empty our stress bucket. So that's why sleep's so important. But if we go to bed with loads of stress, then that's when REM can actually overdo itself and actually wake us up in the middle of the night because it thinks, do you know what? Tom's got loads of stress. I need to wake him up. So we can get into a grip of a vicious circle, I suppose. But yeah, any other practical tips with clients? Always say limit screen time before bed. I think we all know this one now. If we're scrolling on our phone at 11 o'clock, it keeps us mentally stimulated. The light from the phone tell us our brain that it's still daytime, so affects melatonin production. But also it crashes our dopamine system as well. So it gives us these spikes of pleasure, but then it crashes it, so we feel demotivated and anxious, which then can create this negative thinking. So it can really affect our sleep. But yeah, just literally prioritize all we can do for a good night's sleep. So limit screen time before bed. And a lot of my clients say read before bed because, again, it induces a nice relaxed state, just 20 minutes of reading. We have to get our brain to actually just think about the pages, which can actually just create a good bit of mental tiredness and just take our focus away from any negative thoughts we do have about work. But yeah, I mean, I can share them now. There's a few more tips around just managing stress and anxiety, which I do work with my clients. There's one of them which I practice this as well on a daily basis. It can just help to really shift your mindset as well, which can again help break this overthinking or negative thinking loop. So, and it's just journaling. So each evening, I just write down as many things in the day that have been good. So it doesn't need to be big things; it can be small things. And a lot of the time, the small things are the best things because we have a lot of those in our day, so it's easy. So if you've had, I would say, had a good gym session, or you've been for a nice walk, or somebody made you smile, you've had a nice cup of tea, whatever it might be, just write it down. But the science behind it, so when we do acknowledge positive things in our life, we're training our brain to be positive. And there's a part of the brain called the reticular activating system. And that's what controls what we value in our life. So if we keep writing down and acknowledging the positive things in our life, that part of the brain says, this is really important. I'm going to give loads of value to this. And you start noticing more of that. So you painted that picture of the world you want to see. But on the flip side, those negative things in your life, we'll call it work or work meetings, because we're not paying as much attention to them, because we're actively focusing on the positives, we turn down the noise on those negative things in our life. So they're still there, they're not going away, but they just don't affect us so much. So that's a really powerful technique, just, journaling, writing down what's good each evening. What else do I normally do? Another one is just the brain dump as well on the evening. So once I've finished work, write down, or even on the evening, write down what's on your mind. So if you can't sleep at night, just write it down. Whatever it might be, if it's work issues or financial worries, just write it down on a piece of paper. And that essentially just clears it from your brain's memory. But again, it's science backed, so it's called the Zeigarnik effect. And it's just essentially, we're just emptying our brain's memory. So it tells our brain, do you know what? We've written that down. That's safe now on the bit of paper. We don't need to think about it anymore. So again, a really, really powerful technique to help just switch off and help stop that overthinking. I've got loads, to be honest. I could keep going for about a couple
Yeah,
of hours.
it's class because it seems like any sort of action you do that just takes you out of your head because all of that, like every worry is coming from in here.
Yeah,
And like by literally writing it down, putting pen to paper, it nearly like kind of eases you off because I don't know when you read it, it's like, wow, this doesn't actually seem that big of a deal, or like you said, it's safe, it's there.
exactly that. As you mentioned there as well, that's a really good point, isn't it? When you do write it down, it does help you to rationalise. Do you know what? That isn't as bad as it was when it was in here. And
Yeah.
again, that makes you feel good, and you've externalised it. Yeah. But yeah, and again, it's the world that we paint is in here. So it's our thought patterns. Nobody's telling us to think a certain way about any situation, about ourselves, about work. So it's just our thought patterns. So if we can change those thought patterns, which we can, then we can paint that picture of the world we want to see. So yeah, really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I think we need to cut ourselves a bit of slack 'cause it's our first time at this. Like we get one shot at life as a
Yeah,
whole in general. Whatever job you do, whatever it is, you get one shot at it. It's your first time. So I like the journaling aspect, and that's something I'm definitely going to start to pick up myself because like that, when you're busy and you can do that, and again, the small things always do seem to be the best because there's so many. That's refreshing.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I do it, and I say all my clients, once they start doing it and they continue to do it, that's the one thing that they say. Do you know what? This is it is a game changer. But even once you have written it down, we're always going to have bad days. There's no getting away from that because it's life.
Yeah.
But you've always got that as proof to just go back on, have a look, and go. Do you know what? This week I've done X, Y, and Z. That is like amazing. You can just again instantly change your mindset.
Now, a question for you is what's the line between being driven and heading for burnout? Is there a certain line or certain things that you have to be aware of?
I think it varies, doesn't it, from person to person? So because I mean, typically when you're very driven, you've got a your schedule is very busy out of light. You know, in work, outside of work, you're under so much. A lot of it is pressure you've put on yourself. But I think for a lot of people, it's when you've got that goal that you want to work towards. If there's a goal that you really passionate about working to, those stress levels that you're putting yourself under, you can manage those. You've got that capacity to manage it. But I find if it's a goal that it doesn't align with your values, that you are being pushed out of your comfort zone. It might be two people are working towards the same goal, but somebody's got completely different. It just doesn't align with them. But I think regardless of that, it's still important for anybody just to maintain boundaries. So just keep clear boundaries as well. Um, that's where sort of I see burnout always drifts in, where that boundary's broken between work and life outside of work. Um, and typically with burnout, it does come, I mean, it can come from other external factors, but it's typically from work stress. And with I suppose, the modern life that we work in, where we're working from home, there isn't that boundary. So we finish work at 6 o'clock, but we're still sending emails, responding to Teams messages till midnight. So, but yeah, it's a really good question. But I think it varies. But I think for anybody, it's just boundaries for me, just really, really important. And even for myself now, I mean, I've been only in full-time practice since September, so I'm seeing quite a bit of growth. And for me now, it's how do I maintain the boundaries for me, because I'm responding to clients at silly. I mean, you might be the same, responding to clients at
Yeah.
silly o'clock, and it's like, do you know what? Yeah, I need to probably keep that in check. But I think the difference for me now is I'm working towards that goal that I'm passionate about, and yeah, I've got the capacity to yeah, just to manage that.
Is it important to kind of, John, you talk about journaling where you're reflecting, is it important to like write down potential goals that you have in the future? Because then it's like it's finding that fine line, especially like if you're in the build phase now of business and pushing on with being successful at what you do, you're going to be touching burnout. But like you said, you have that goal in mind where it's like, this is what it's working towards, so it's not as bad. Does that cross like some of the work you see in clients as well? Like just clear definition.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You're absolutely. And I think that's yeah. Once you do have those goals as well defined, and it's always something like you mentioned, you can always have that in the back of your mind. You know what? I'm working towards this goal. It's and it will be worth it. But also on that as well, just recognizing as you're going through the journey as well. Going down more of a business route here is just journaling the wins as well and the things that haven't worked. Any and just yeah, just journaling that, really, the journey. What hasn't worked. What did work, and what can you do more of, what can you do less of, what's consuming your time, what isn't consuming your time, and yeah, that really good. Yeah, I went to a workshop, a business workshop not so long ago. It was about business well-being, and was given a really useful workbook around this, actually, about journaling your journey, the business, and having regular checkpoints, I suppose, that have you reached this goal? And I think, as you mentioned, it's always good to have that goal in mind, isn't it? We need to be working to something, and us as human beings, that's what we want, don't we? We want to be working towards a goal and achieving. When we don't, I think that's where we can feel lost, and we don't have that focus, and we don't have that drive, because what we're working towards, well, if we don't have a goal, then we can't be working towards anything. But yeah, I think that's a great point, definitely.
During, like, let's say, hypnotherapy, then when people are in a session with you, do they find like certain vices that they have or clutches during their day are negatively affecting, like, let's say, their ability to handle stress? Like, straight away, I'm thinking like caffeine. If you're hammering down caffeine all the time, that's obviously going to keep you alert, keep you awake. Do you find, like, let's say, when people get a clear level head of thinking, do they see that a lot clearer as well? Could be drinking coffee, alcohol, smoking.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so my approach is solution focused. So we always, in the sessions, we celebrate what's been working for the client, so what's working, what can we do more of, and what's your if you were a little bit happier, if you'd reach your goals, what would that look like? What would life look like? And we try and help the client to identify elements. So it's quite a what's the right word? It's quite an intelligent way of getting the client to recognise what they need to do, because when they come up with their own solutions, then they can implement. If I'm telling them, you know what, you need to stop doing X, Y, and Z, nobody likes to be told what to do they?
It's
But
a
as you
bad
mentioned
teacher.
there, absolutely. But yeah, yeah, literally all my clients. So we'll be talking. They might say, I might want to get a six pack. Well, how are you going to get a six pack? Well, I need to stop eating chocolate or cut down the chocolate intake. I've not told them that, but they do recognise their own what they need to do. But yeah, a lot of it is, yeah, they do recognise the changes they need to make, because they're just getting more intellectual control. So the stress levels are reduced. They're getting more intellectual control now, where they are thinking a bit more rationally about their situation. Really realising that things aren't so bad, and feeling a bit more clear-headed of the changes that they need to make to take them towards their goals. But yeah, I mentioned chocolate there because that's probably one of my vices. I need to cut down on the chocolate, to be honest. Yeah, had a bit over Easter.
Everyone has. I won't be worrying. Without obviously like going into too much detail, what's one of the biggest transformations you've seen with the client you've worked with in recent months?
Yeah, there's one that does stick out for me, and this was, I think it was just before Christmas. Actually, she stopped working with me, and I actually heard off her last week, and she's still doing like really really well. But she was suffering with crippling anxiety. She even just simple tasks like leaving the house and going doing the shopping, taking the dog for walks, she was just really struggling with. Work as well. Was she off sick work? I can't remember. But she was just really struggling day to day. So I worked with her for about 12 weeks or 12 sessions. Um, but the one of the biggest thing, or the biggest shifts is that she was asked to be a maid of honor for a friend's wedding, and she said she can't do it because she wasn't going to go to the wedding, because she just wasn't in the right mind space. She wasn't going on the hen do,
Well,
but yeah, just with the sessions that how we work together, we just give her that confidence back, that self belief, and she was doing like crazy things. She was the maid of honor at a friend's wedding. She went on the hen do, but she was doing stuff like paddle boarding, kayaking, stuff she'd never done before. Yeah, and we were just exploring that with her. If you were 10 out of 10, what would you be doing as a 10 out of 10? And she was like, well, I'd be going paddleboarding, I'd be doing kayaking. I'm like, well, when could you do that? She's like, well, if I wanted to, I could do it tomorrow. And this was the kind of shifts. It's not rocket science. It's just using that imagination again of what we can do. But I think we don't unlock that full power. But yeah, I think that was the biggest one. The fact that she wasn't going to go to a friend's wedding, the hen do, and yeah, completely flipped the scripts, and she was completely transformed.
Savage. Is there a time frame on how long people need to commit to, let's say, sessions of hypnotherapy, or is it all person dependent, kind of based off the first initial consult?
It is, yeah, it is dependent. For the issues that I'm mainly working with now, so it's chronic stress and anxiety. Typically between like 6 to 12 sessions, but it can be a little bit more. But yeah, I always say to clients, if they can commit to 6 sessions, they will see progress a lot more. If they're committed to the process, they will see change, because it's a collaborative process. Essentially, it's not something I just do to the client. With the hypnosis, it's a collaborative approach. It's a bit like I'm a bit like a PT for the mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, typically about 6 to 12 sessions, ideally once a week.
Class, class. And then let's say now it's middle of the day. How can someone manage overthinking then? Like, let's say just hit their lunch break. They might have a journal with them or anything like that. Is there any practical tips? Middle of the day, you're in work and you find like anxiety or stress, overthinking is kicking in big time.
Yeah, there's a few techniques. If you can get outside, even if it's just to stand outside. And I mean, if it's pissing down with rain, obviously we might not be able to do that.
Every
But yeah,
Irish person listening to this is like, does he realize where we live?
take your brolly outside. But honestly, yeah, just get outside. If it's sunny, even better. Um, Once we connect with nature, we'll get that serotonin hit, which governs our mood and energy. So that will make a big difference. But even just getting outside and going for a walk, so just going for a 10-minute walk, while you're doing that, or even if you just walk around the office block, I don't know, but just get outside, and while you're doing that, and this is something I tend to do when I'm walking the dog, you can just practice gratitude. So when you're going for a walk, just think to yourself what you're grateful for right now. And again, it might be tough if you really under a lot of stress. But if you've got a partner, you're grateful for your partner. And then just ask yourself why you're grateful for your partner, and just think about that. But again, that can just really to help ground you and shift your mindset again, and just completely shift how you're looking at your life. So it's really powerful. If you can't get outside, another really good one is box breathing. So it's a technique, and to be honest, it's a technique I use sometimes if I'm giving a presentation and I'm feeling a little bit nervous, which is, always have a bit of nervous energy. For me, that's great, because it keeps me on edge. It's always good to have that nervous energy because it shows you are caring about your audience. But yes, box breathing is just where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then hold it for 4 seconds. And essentially that will just help to settle your nervous system, just calm your nervous system. So just essentially tell your mind that everything's safe, no need to worry. If you do that for a couple of minutes, you'll really notice the difference. But a lot of these practices, you're best just implementing them as regular routines throughout the day. The more you do of these routines, the more benefit you'll get.
And then obviously when you have success and your confidence is built up, like anything, you can't just be like, that's it. I'm done. I'm fixed. Like obviously it takes lots of reps and time to keep on top of it.
Exactly that, yeah. I'll say a lot of these techniques. We talked about that journaling one of writing down what's been good. Um, I've had even some of my friends have said, yeah, I did it for a bit, but didn't really do anything for me. I'm like, how long did you do it for? 3 days. I'm like, I say, give it 2 weeks. Give it 2 weeks. Don't, but not with 1 or 2 days in between. Where you don't do it. Do it 2 weeks solid. Commit to it. It's 5 minutes, and see what you feel like. Yeah, but yeah, again, it just requires repetition. Some of these will help in the moment, like the box breathing one. That will help in the moment. But the more you do of it, the more better you'll get at it.
Yeah. And then what's the biggest lesson you've learned from your own journey and client's journey when it comes to, like, let's say, managing stress? Like, is it a case of just patience, time, or gratitude? Like, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from your work and your own personal journey with this?
Oh, biggest lesson learned. I would probably say, yeah, probably this was probably learned from the experience I had as well, where I was sort of burning out, but also what I've learned from my clients, or more of an observation, but is just on the importance of doing positive activities. So when we stop doing things that we enjoy in life, like going to the gym, going out with friends, that can have a massive effect on our well-being and on our capacity as well to manage our stress levels then. So I think it's that. So I would just put a really sort of, I couldn't stress how important it is just to keep carrying out positive activities. So like going to the gym, where it's exercise, um, seeing your friends, all those positive interactions, because ultimately it's those actions that create all those brain chemicals, so dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and that's what governs how happy we are, how motivated we are, how brave we are, and how resilient we are to stress. So if we're carrying out loads of positive activities like that, we're more resilient to stress and we can lead a more happier life. So I'd probably say that was something in my life I noticed that I stopped doing it. And that coincided with me then just, I couldn't handle the stress. It was just a lot worse. And same with my clients, when the clients come and see me, they've, they've allowed probably work to consume the majority of their life.
Okay, cool. And now, what does switching off actually look like for yourself?
Switching up, yeah, for me, I do like the outdoors. I mean, I love my exercise, so um, whether it's walking the dog, um, and I mean, I've only started doing it recently, but I always used to take my phone out with me, sometimes listen to music, but now I go phone free, and I find that does make a real difference as well, where you can just
Unreal.
actually be in the moment. Yeah, it does really make a difference. Yeah, so that's switching off. Yeah, because before I'd go walk the dog, I'd have my phone, be responding to messages, and not real. I got that benefit from taking that walk. You know, not freed up, cleared my mind space. But yeah, walking, running, love running. I've got a home gym here, so I like working out. I like playing darts, so I've got a darts board. So a few darts normally helps me just to relax and just to reset. Really, if I'm feeling a little bit, on edge, just throw a few darts, and then that can be a bit of a mental reset for me, and that's a bit of an anchor for me as well now. So I know if I'm feeling a little bit, stressed, I need to step away, throw a few darts, and instantly that does the trick. And I think that's what you might find as well. If you are stressed and you do implement something in your life, like going for a walk, you'll just notice that straight away. Do you know what? I'm feeling a little bit stressed. I'll go for a walk and you'll know straight away. So you're just reinforcing all that behaviour. But yeah, I think that's mainly for me, and probably watching a bit of TV, movies, sports.
Class,
Yeah.
class. Well, look, Tom, I really appreciate you taking time out to come on. Anyone listening to this, where can they find you? Where can they get in touch with you to inquire about your work and what you actually do?
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, yeah. Thanks again, Carl, for having me on. So I'm on Instagram, so Mindstar Hypnotherapy. I'm on TikTok, Mindstar Hypnotherapy, and I have a website at www.mindstarhypnotherapy.com. But some of the techniques we've talked about as well, I've written a free guide. It's on my website to download, and it just outlines some of these techniques we've talked about, like the brain dump and the journaling and the science behind it. So it might be useful for some of the listeners out there to download that and learn a bit about the brain and some simple neuroscience as well.
Yeah, Savage. I'm going to share that when we announce this podcast, so
Cool, great
we'll
stuff.
get that sent out. But no, really appreciate you for coming on, and even myself, I benefit from this. But a lot of people listening to this will benefit massively. So again, Tom, thank you for your time today.
Cheers, Carl. Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, been a good chat. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Thank you.